Welcome back. This is Beyond the Box Score. I've got my buddy Ryan Heath with me today, and we have got a bunch of matchup notes to get into to help you with your Week 8 start-sit decisions, to help you with any sports betting, DFS, any NFL interests you've got this week. I think we have a lot of cool different angles to talk you all through. We, at this point in the year, are getting more and more cool matchup data, and basically anything today you're going to hear referenced is from the Fantasy Points data suite. So shout out to them, of course, data.fantasypoints.com. With that, let's get right into it. Ryan, how are you doing today?
Doing great, man. Yeah, as you said, we kind of are at the point where we have a lot of data, a lot of things to hang ourselves with, but also a lot of ways to get some unique angles. Hey, we talked up Bo Nix, Jackson Dart last week. We felt like we were crazy. Bo Nix, highest scoring quarterback, highest scoring player of the week. So that was pretty sick.
Jackson Dart number 2.
Yeah, no, it's pretty, that made me really happy, just watching that game kind of go off at the end of it. Yeah, it was really fun. Really wish Bo Nix had brought his receivers with him. I would be a much richer man if that had happened. But nonetheless, a great week. Excited to dive in again for Week 8.
Ryan is already getting crap from the chat about the empty room. Yes, Ryan is relocating. There is no more barricaded door anymore. This man is focused on the work, Okay, so you know the content's gonna be good. The work is gonna be good. We're getting all the production, that end of it, ironed out as we go along here. But thank you, Ryan, for being here. And I know, speaking of the work, you've got something that's gonna be very interesting, very near and dear to the hearts of the Beyond the Box Score listeners, and that is some Baltimore Ravens, Chicago Bears notes for us. Of course, that's an important game for anybody in Week 8. Expected to be one of the highest scoring games on the slate, tied with the Dallas Cowboys and Denver Broncos in terms of over-unders from Vegas. But specifically for the sickos here, they want to hear about Colston Loveland, always. And then we've talked a lot about both DeAndre Swift and Zay Flowers as trade candidates lately. So hit us with the goodness here. What are we looking at with these guys? Is it a good spot for all three of them? Like, obviously the shootout, but what does the matchup say?
Yeah, so I'll start with Loveland. So the Ravens this year have been a very man coverage heavy team in general, third highest rate. But over their past couple of games, as the injuries have kind of racked up, they've shifted to being a lot more cover 3 heavy. They've played cover 3 nearly 44% of the time over their past 2 games, which would rank second most. If that were to stick this week coming out of the bye, then it is just clearly an awesome matchup for Colston Loveland. In this season, Loveland and Cole Kmet together have combined for a 25% target share against cover 3. That's close to double what they were doing against every other shell overall. It is more than Rome Odunze. And for those unaware, it seems likely that Cole Kmet could miss this game. So if you're looking for the Colston Loveland breakout with the Bears having to throw more, with him already having played a lot more on third downs the past couple weeks, I think this is probably the game for it. The other guys you mentioned, DeAndre Swift, I'm pretty nervous about Swift in this spot. He's been great over his past 3 games, but Swift has always been a very game script sensitive running back, at least since he joined the Bears. Just 12.2 fantasy points per game in the team's 2 losses this year, 10.7 since the start of last season, since he joined the team. He's at only around a 7% target share, I believe, in his 2 games since the bye. I've been calling DeAndre Swift a sell high candidate. He's got a couple of nice matchups in the 2 weeks after this, but the schedule gets a lot tougher as we get into the fantasy playoffs. Bears aren't favored in nearly as many games going forward. And then the final thing is, this is an amazing Zay Flowers spot. I've been calling him a buy low for several weeks now. Bears giving up the most schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to the slot. Flowers playing in the slot on nearly 38% of his routes, also allowing the 5th most receiving yards per game downfield. Flowers easily leading the Ravens in air yardage share. So this could be kind of the undeniable blow up spot for him with Lamar Jackson back. And he is someone that I'm actively trying to go out and get in leagues right now.
Sounds like last call on Zay Flowers is kind of what I'm hearing. Yeah, we've mentioned him as one of the best buys for several weeks now. And same thing with Swift. Like we've been worried about some of the late season matchups for sure. So I think that could make sense to sell. There's still the massive upside with Swift. Like that's the important thing to remember here when considering like how you're going to handle these start-sit decisions is if the Ravens do get up big, that would definitely be problematic for Swift, and you could even get like a 4 or 5 point game or something like that if he's not, as involved as he would be if they're playing with the lead or in a neutral situation. But if the game is close and back and forth, so it basically kind of comes down to Caleb Williams, I think. If he's able to keep the game close and competitive by scoring like Vegas expects, what are Baltimore, like 6.5 point favorites? Yeah. If it's close, then Swift could have another one of these games. Absolutely. Like we've seen the Ravens struggle to tackle. They are coming out of their bye week, so Baltimore is expecting them to play pretty tough in this spot. But let me show you, Ryan, where I landed on Swift and some of these mid-range running backs, the RB2s of the world. It's kind of been a mess all season, but especially the last couple of weeks, I've had a tough time with it. And this week, like I think it's very matchup dependent, and I'm not really sure where to rank these guys. At the beginning of the week, I had Swift up in the like Jaylen Warren range up here, running back 12, running back 13. He's currently down to running back 17, which is 2 spots below consensus. The guys I have ahead of him are Breece Hall, J.K. Dobbins, Chase Brown, Jaylen Warren, and then you get into Cam Scatterbo, Quinshon Judkins, which I think is kind of a tier break. Anything stand out to you from this range?
I do think you could talk me into him over a Breece Hall. It's really rough with Breece Hall right now. He has a good schematic rushing matchup that that I can just read off right now. 4th most rushing attempts on zone concepts. Bengals allowing the 4th most yards per carry against zone, over 5 yards per carry. But to me, I'm just very scared that the Jets immediately get down in this game. Kind of similar to the Bears, but I almost have more faith in Caleb Williams to keep it competitive than either an injured Tyrod Taylor or Justin Fields. So I think I would flip Swift and Hall most likely, just overall better game environment. But I think about where you've got him is probably right.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. That game could be fun. Like the Joe Flacco versus Tyrod Taylor game could be fun here. Both teams have struggled a little bit defensively, but it would not surprise me. You're right. The Jets are struggling right now, so it would not surprise me if they get down early. We've got some more notes on the Cincinnati side of things later. Okay, so anything else from this range? Like you want to talk about Tyler Allgeier? Am I right there?
I do, yeah. It's really more that I feel like people have asked me about Tyler Allgeier more than like any other player this week, which I get, guys.
The Dolphins.
Yeah, it's the Dolphins. I would totally understand why you want to put him in your lineup. So my notes on Allgeier is, yes, it's obviously just an amazing general matchup for running backs. Dolphins allowing the 2nd most yards per carry to opposing zone concepts, with which both Robinson and Allgeier run at a high rate. They've given up either 100 scrimmage yards or 26 plus fantasy points to every RB1 that they have faced since week 2. But like the only thing that makes me interested in Allgeier is that we see when the Falcons get into these commanding positions at the end of games, they really like to run the clock out with Allgeier rather than with Bijan. If they go extremely run heavy in this game, both backs could get at least decent volume. But yeah, over the past 2 seasons, when the Falcons are leading in the 4th quarter, Allgeier has gotten 62% of the backfield's rushing attempts, 55% of the backfield's expected fantasy points. It is quite a wide spread here, if I'm not mistaken, 7.5 point favorites with the Falcons. So I do think Allgeier is at least flex viable. I would definitely play him over Hubbard. I would definitely play him over Monangai. I think Bill is like the debate here.
Yeah.
Man, I don't know. How do you feel about this as the resident Bill defender?
I feel like I'm probably going to move Allgeier ahead of him, to be honest. It feels pretty rough for Bill. At least the receivers are expected to be back this week, and I think that really helps him a lot. But man, we saw last week that like if the pass offense isn't going to get the respect of the defense, then you can shut this run game down, and then that shut the whole offense down. And I think We'll see, because obviously Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel demand respect, but I do think like we kind of just got the blueprint on like how to stop this offense. And Mariota has played really well at times, but like to me, it's like him versus Spags. Vegas backs up the sentiment too that like I just don't feel much confidence. And given the role that Bill's in, where he's mostly kind of an early down back, it's pretty similar. It's pretty similar to Swift, except there's like a designated passing downs back, So we feel pretty confident he's not going to be on the field if they fall behind. He's a risky play is basically where I'm at. Because if Mariota plays well, then I do think that the easiest way to attack the Chiefs offense is right up the middle with a run game. And they just lost their second round D tackle there. That's already like by far the easiest place to attack this team and the weakest part of their defense. And that's how you use Bill, right? That's how they're using Bill. It's like pretty much just straight up with these man gap runs. And so like if Mariota is able to keep it going, like facilitate offense and like gets first downs, then I do think Bill could have a good game, especially if this kind of turns into a shootout or anything like that. But you're probably, as weird as it sounds, you're probably safer with Allgeier. Allgeier is such a valuable fantasy piece. I think people sleep on that, but it's like there's massive contingent upside if anything were to happen to Bijan, and you can plug him in if you need to, like this. Not every single matchup. If they're expected to fall behind, you can't. But games like this, he can legitimately be the bye week plug-in that you need.
Yeah, no, completely agreed. The only thing I'll add is that, actually so far by success rate against man gap, the Chiefs have been the sixth toughest defense, just 43%. So maybe that is affected by the injury as you mentioned. But to me, even kind of from that angle, the matchup is like a little bit scary to me.
I would have to dig into that. Just like knowing the team, watching the team, that's clear. Not specifically man gap, but just like up the middle, runs up the middle. They've really struggled against. I do think Omar Norman-Lott, the guy who's out, is more of a pass rusher than anything. But it's just like he's better than what they had. Like they don't have much there. All right, I want to hear your rush scheme notes and see if that. I'm gonna maybe like shift around some things at running back while you talk us through your rush scheme notes.
All right. Yeah. So starting with the Thursday night game, one of the more interesting things I found is that the Chargers have been using Kimani Vidal very differently than they were using Omarion Hampton. It's a lot more zone rushing with Vidal than with Hampton, which makes sense to me. From having watched Hampton, it was clear that his biggest issue was vision. He just needs to be told where to go, follow the blocker. That was what was working with him. With Vidal, they've been running more of the zone stuff. And that's actually really good in this matchup against the Vikings. They are top 5 in yards per carry allowed to opposing zone concepts, over 4.5. But they're actually a very tough defense at defending man gap concepts. So with Vidal, I almost said this earlier, but I think I actually feel better about him than a Kamara, than a Breece Hall. Hassan Haskins likely to miss this game. He's just, his workload's been awesome. His workload's been better than Swift's even. So I think you could even argue that.
I like it a lot from an upside standpoint. I've got this weird nagging little thing that like feels like the Haskins injury is actually going to be a bad thing because Nyheim Hines is going to get on the field and like clearly have the passing downs. They're going to like get him more involved, and that will actually be more meaningful than the role that Haskins was playing, which would just annoy the crap out of me. But I think
would be annoying. Yes.
I do think that there's definitely upside here, like a home game against the Vikings and a game that the Chargers could put a lot of points up and be leading.
Yep. Let's see. We already talked through Allgeier. We already talked through Swift. We already talked through Hall. Chase Brown is someone that I've seen like optimism kind of around the industry for, because look, he's averaging whatever it is, 6 or 7 yards per carry over the past 2 weeks. The workload hasn't been good, and this matchup is actually worse than you would expect from a schematic perspective. Chase Brown has run the 7th most of his runs on man gap concepts. The Jets are actually bottom 5 in yards per carry allowed and success rate allowed to man gap. Teams do usually try to run on the Jets, but I don't think that, we'll talk about this later, I don't think that's what the Bengals are going to try to do. And also, it's just schematically not a great spot for Brown to be efficient. So I'm kind of worried. Like his backfield rush attempt share has been very down over the past 3 or so games, which I kind of get. I think Chase Brown is a much better rusher than Samaje Perine, but when you're the Bengals and every run is going for 3 yards per carry. I understand trying to mix things up. I don't know if they just like unleash him like a lot of people seem to be excited for this week.
Yeah, that's about where I'm at too. It's like I think there's upside for him to be one of the highest scorers the way that the Jets have played defensively. But his workload is other than I guess Judkins, but like Judkins gets so much more work. Like when he's on the field, it's so much more concentrated. I was just gonna say his workload is pretty clearly the worst of anyone up in this range. Does this look about right, or would you even have somebody like Dobbins ahead of him?
I think I would move a Dobbins ahead of him. Definitely would take him over Swift, but it's pretty. The Broncos have a very high implied total this week.
Right, that's what
Bengals.
I was checking to see. Like I was like Denver, I know is up in the top 5. I didn't realize Cincinnati was at 25. I was thinking like 23 or something. 25 points is what their implied total from Vegas is compared to 27 for Denver. Yeah. Alrighty. Did you have anything else at running back?
Let's see. Ramondre Stevenson, like I get that he's getting all the work and all the snaps. Browns are just obviously a very tough matchup, especially against man gap concepts. Second fewest yards per carry allowed. I might move him below a Woody Marks even. I might just be a Ramondre Stevenson hater though. That you can maybe ignore that.
It's tough, man. He's getting like a freaking 90% snap rate, and I actually think he's playing really well at the last few games. So it's tough. I get what you're saying with the matchup for sure. But also like I just think he's better than Woody Marks. I think the role is better. They're going to probably score more points. And while Cleveland's defense is clearly better, San Fran's defense played really well last week. I don't know how long that's going to keep up, but like I didn't see a defense that was flying around more than their defense was. Maybe it's a letdown spot here. Maybe they don't have quite as much juice in this spot, but yeah, that's where I'm at with Mondre.
Yeah, fair enough. I think you have Jaylen Warren exactly where he should be, but the fun little note I had on him is that he is like overwhelmingly just has been a zone rusher this year. The Packers are allowing the highest success rate on zone concept runs, but the 5th fewest yards per carry, which is under 3.5. So to me, that just those two numbers say to me, okay, maybe the Steelers are just going to run for 3 yards, 3 yards, 3 yards on every single play, and that's all that their offense is going to do. They've actually have let Rodgers sling it a little bit more than I expected this year, but I do think this is like a very strong spot for Warren. RB13 makes a lot of sense to me.
I love Warren, man. And yeah, they have let Rodgers sling it lately. I'm very excited for this game. I looked at this week's slate of games and was like super underwhelmed. And then I got to the Sunday night game, like that one could be a lot of fun. That could be really weird. All right, we're going to take our first break, get back with a few more running back notes. Of course, we got to talk more about Bill Krosky-Merritt for the good people here. And then get into some flex decisions. Like what are you doing with some of these running backs compared to wide receivers or even tight ends? You know, there's a lot of interesting tight ends this week. We're going to take our first break first.
This is European soccer's biggest stage.
Written in the stars! What a difference she has made!
The question is, can you handle it?
Can you handle it?
The crowd here feels electric. Stream every match of the UEFA Women's Champions League on Paramount+.
All right, Ryan, it looks like you have two more scheme-based matchup notes at running back, and I'm interested to hear both of them. Bill, of course, but also Isaiah Pacheco, who I think is weirdly one of the more interesting fantasy players right now because I've been very low on him all season. But Kareem Hunt is banged up, and they've kind of moved more towards Pacheco in the first halves of games. It's been like a 60% snap rate for Pacheco, and the offense looks really good, you know? So like down the stretch, could Pacheco actually be a pretty meaningful fantasy player, you know, and somebody that you can get for dirt cheap? What do you think about Pacheco's week 8 matchup?
Yeah, I think so. I've been like maybe a little less optimistic on Pacheco from a season-long perspective, just because ultimately what this Chiefs team wants to do is throw the ball. They're easily leading the NFL in PRO. It looks like, have found Brashard Smith as like an extension of their run game, where they just are going to throw him 5 screens. If they do that every single week, then awesome. So I do think that caps Pacheco's like season-long upside a lot.
But to be clear, I've got him like
yeah.
I'm going to like running back 28 rest of season. And up until now, it's been like he's running back 37 or something. I want nothing to do with him for the reasons you're giving, right? Red zone work, all the receiving stuff that's going on. And there's just like this offense is good. There's like 8 guys who could get on the field and do something at this point. So there's just less touches for him. But lately it does feel like it's concentrating on him a little bit more, and he actually might be somebody you can use in a flex if you need to.
Yeah, no, agreed. This week, this is like the week for it, right? Commanders are a top 3 run funnel by pass rate over expectation allowed. Teams are generally choosing to run on them. Pacheco is mostly being used on zone concepts. Commanders are top 10 in success rate allowed to opposing zone concepts. Yeah, I don't think you're going to get like huge bell cow workload. I still do think that to some extent, like Patrick Mahomes is on a mission to like dunk on the entire league right now until the Chiefs are in first place again. But like in between, if you're getting 14 or 15 rush attempts from from Isaiah Pacheco, like in the first half, then one of those could break away for sure. So I think there is a bit of upside here. And I think, more than most weeks, the volume should actually be pretty decent. I would play him over Rico Dowdle.
Yeah, that's fair. Washington, man, their linebackers are so slow. They've been really struggling. And I think that's maybe better for somebody like Rashard Smith, who they're using more to get to the outside. He's somebody you could flex if you had to. But I think it's probably relevant for Pacheco too. He's been getting a little bit more explosive creation for the Chiefs lately. Okay, that's everything running back, right? Do you want to look at some flex decisions?
Let's do it.
All right. So this is just where Fantasy Pros put them. This is for half PPR. This is just like based off my positional rankings. So we can move things around if anything seems way off. Like I think typically are higher than the running backs than I would be relative to the receivers. So let's start with like Warren, Chase Brown, Dobbins, those guys. We are probably like definitely starting Odunze over all of them. Is that where you're at?
Yeah, agreed.
Olave, DK Metcalf, Devontae Smith. What about those guys?
Olave, I would go over Chase Brown.
Okay.
Metcalf, I still just like don't know what to do with Metcalf. I guess he's not that different of a play than like a DeAndre Swift or whatever, where it's very boom bust to me this week.
So much upside with these Eagles receivers. We're going to get to their matchup later.
Yeah, I think I'd play the Eagles over the Vidals, definitely. Let's see what else here.
Yeah, they're probably...
Give me some other names to focus on. There's so much here.
Yeah, the Eagles are probably pretty similar to Swift, where there's a really wide range of outcomes, but the upside is very exciting. I'm going to put them just below Swift, below Dobbins, below Chase Brown for flex decisions, with Vidal being the next player and then DK Metcalf. So then we've arrived at like Ladd McConkey, Michael Pittman, T. Higgins, Jordan Addison, George Pickens, Keenan Allen, like those types of players compared to like Breece Hall and Kamara. Is Kamara behind all of them?
I think yes for me.
Okay.
Like I don't hate the spot for Kamara, but I really like a lot of those receivers. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I think like way too much in terms of PPR, but all of those wide receiver names you just listed off have a lot of upside.
Okay. What about some other guys with upside, but they're definitely riskier plays? That's like Quentin Johnston, Jalen Waddle, Stephon Diggs, Xavier Worthy, Romeo Doubs. What do you think about them compared to somebody like Rico Dowdle or Pacheco?
I think I'd go Dowdle and Pacheco over pretty much all of those, aside from maybe Quentin Johnston. But
okay, here's the range that you will find the Oronde Gadsdens and Mason Taylors, Colston Loveland, some of the tight ends that are getting picked up this week. Harold Fannin is just below them. For like flex this consideration, what do you think about those guys compared to somebody like Tez Johnson or like the Washington receivers coming back? We don't know exactly where they'll be. Mariota at quarterback. They're facing the Chiefs. Matthew Golden. Some of these like high variance, volatile receivers. Would you rather just start somebody like Mason Taylor over there?
Yes, actually. Yeah, it's like a really good spot for Taylor just in terms of the Bengals funnel, everything underneath. I do think the Jets are going to be trailing in this game. Yeah, that's a really good spot for Taylor. It's great spot for. I like Gadsden over most of those kind of marginal wide receiver names you mentioned as well.
Yep. I have Gadsden at the top of this tier. Him and Dallas Goedert. I'm fine moving them around. Either way, what do you think about them compared to like Troy Franklin, who I know you're a fan of, and he's got a good matchup here against Dallas?
Yeah, he had like 26 expected fantasy points last week. They just kept throwing to him. He had like close to 150 air yards, I think. But like his only production came on the deflected touchdown catch. So I do actually like this matchup. We'll talk about it a little bit later. But the Cowboys are doing some interesting things, we'll call it, with like their man and their zone rates that I think could benefit all of the Broncos. So yeah, I do like Franklin. I might play him even over like a Chuba Hubbard. Just I think there's a lot more upside there.
Alrighty.
Yeah, that seems pretty good.
Rashid Shaheed has got the Bucks. Juwan Jennings we saw get more involved last week. Tough matchup though against Houston. Like, would you move those guys up or down?
I think you got him basically in the right spot.
Okay.
Yeah. No, like particularly positive matchup notes for either of them, but both good players.
Let's finish up with these two running backs here, Allgeier and Bill. Are you moving them ahead of Shaheed, Jennings, Alec Pierce, DJ Moore, Dobbs, Worthy, Wandale Robinson? Where do they land for you?
I think just ahead of Shaheed and Jennings for me, or ahead of DJ Moore too. Screw DJ Moore.
Okay. Don't know what DJ Moore did to deserve that. Is that just a Luther Burden thing?
No, man, it's like I don't know. This is actually you missed this when you came on Dynasty Points earlier this week. I think Jacob Sanderson though says this the best of anybody, where the Bears offense is like, when you watch it, it flows really well when they're doing anything other than throw to DJ Moore. But once in a while, they're just like, fine. Like, we have to come out of our flow. We have to just throw a design touch to DJ Moore to like keep him happy and stop playing our offense for these 4 or 5 plays a game. So that's like my complaint about DJ Moore is that, yeah, he not only is he clogging everything that we want to happen with the Bears offense and like their younger players, but it's just, yeah, it's a little annoying just to watch.
I would say it's probably pretty annoying to be running routes and getting open a lot and your quarterback not be able to find you because he's just like stuck and he's like can't stop being stuck. So that to me sounds like a Caleb thing where like Ben Johnson has to do that because otherwise DJ Moore doesn't get involved, and that doesn't make sense because he's actually pretty good. But I get it. I get how it can be frustrating. You tend to be frustrated with AJ Brown too, it seems like. In an ideal world, everything just flows, right? That'd be great. But yeah, we get some personality from these receivers, which we love and we hate. That's fair. Matthew Golden, is he about right here? Like you said, behind Mason Taylor, but Taylor's towards the top of this range of tight ends. What do you think about Matthew Golden compared to Pitts, Fannin, Kelsey, and Loveland?
I think over all of those tight ends aside from Taylor for me. Okay. Yeah.
Washington receivers over those guys?
I just like don't know what to do with them. Yeah, okay. It's kind of. Yeah, I think Debo, if he plays, probably gets a lot of targets. I don't know that the offense succeeds like in any way against this Chiefs defense, as we were kind of talking about. I think with Debo, you almost have to put him at least up around like the Juwan Jennings kind of range, just off of expected volume.
But I don't like playing Debo when he's not healthy.
That's also fair. Yeah. Yeah, we don't know how healthy he is.
Yeah, I would rather just wait and see. Like, I feel really pretty good about these tight ends. I think there's like a massive amount of upside with them, and I don't know if there's that much upside with Debo and Mariota. All right, so this is basically where I've landed. For anybody listening and not watching, it is Gadsden and then Kincaid and then Mason Taylor and then Kyle Pitts, Harold Fannin Jr., Travis Kelsey, and Loveland is where I landed on those tight ends. Is there anything that you would definitely change around? There's a tier break there from me, and then it's like Dalton Schultz, Mark Andrews, Hunter Henry.
Yeah, I mean, I would have Loveland over Travis Kelsey.
Let's go. Done.
Kelsey averages like 7 fantasy points per game in his last 10 regular season games with Rashee Rice on the field. He's just not part of the offense. So, yeah, give me Loveland.
I love it. Tez Johnson in this same range too. For anybody who's been picking Tez up, I feel like it's a decent spot for him against a Saints team that doesn't get a lot of pressure on the quarterback. Takes a long time to get pressure on the quarterback. And so we could see some stuff develop for Tez Johnson as a route winner. But we'll end there. We'll take our second break, and then we'll get back with some more of those cool matchup notes, some pressure notes, all that good stuff. We will take a break. Just real quick here, we're going to go on break. Pretty sure. Let's see if I can send us to break.
The most original musical ever is now streaming on Paramount Plus.
I'm just giving the people what they want.
Better Man absolutely sizzles from start to finish. Better Man, now streaming on Paramount Plus.
And we're back. Okay, I'm going to take you through some blitz and pressure notes. Ryan, feel free to add anything if I missed anything. I know you've got some too. So I want to start with Tua. You brought up Tua in your notes, and we're going to cover the coverage side of this matchup in regards to Jalen Waddle more in just a bit. But man, this Falcons defense is so interesting under Jeff Ulbrich. They've completely transformed themselves, and they really prioritized defense this year. This past offseason, they really believed in it. And they haven't been perfect. There have been some games where they've got, but it's been cool to see it transformed so drastically. And it's also cool that they're playing in such a different way. Like, they have a freaking 48% blitz rate. The Vikings at 42% are the only other team above 40%. So it's just an extremely aggressive defense, blitzing a ton, getting up and pressing with AJ Terrell, like leaving a lot of plays, like over 70% of their plays. They have just one safety back. And so they're just really like, you beat us. Let's see if you're going to beat us. And some players can, but man, not very many have. And so where are you at? I don't think they've allowed more than 200 yards in a game to a passer. Where are you at with Tua in regards to how you expect him to like navigate the pressure and the blitz here?
Yeah, I don't know that I really have much interest in streaming Tua or starting him or anything like that. But I did think it was interesting just for like the other pieces of this Dolphins offense that I don't know, as bad as the vibes obviously are around the Dolphins, I don't know that this is just a game where they kind of roll over and do nothing. Tua's actually been decent against the blitz, 50% more efficient by fantasy points per drop back when blitzed, ranking top 15. It's really just because Tua naturally gets it out very quick. One of the fastest times to throw in the NFL. The Dolphins are actually allowing the lowest pressure rate this year just because Tua gets it out before there's ever any chance to generate pressure. So yeah, I don't know, kind of like an interesting spot where I think like the Dolphins offense could function more than we have seen it at times, certainly more than we saw it function last week.
You are muted. I'm back. I'm good. Yeah, they have allowed 167, 158, 121, 156, 180, 152 passing yards this year. And that includes, matchups against Josh Allen, Baker Mayfield, the great Mac Jones. Pretty impressive stuff, what we've got from Atlanta. We'll talk more about Waddle in a bit. Okay, so the Bengals, we've talked about that game a little bit. We're going to spend a little bit more time with it too. But I wanted to bring up the blitz rate here is only 16% blitz rate, which is easily the lowest in the league. And so we've talked about Mason Taylor, potentially Breece Hall, but I think more so Taylor benefits from this lack of blitzing. I think probably means more checkdowns to Taylor, unless you believe that these Jets receivers are going to win down the field. I kind of don't, but we'll spend some time with the coverage side of this in a minute. 49ers, the San Francisco 49ers are 31st in blitz rate. That rate is down over the past month. We did see like a pretty heroic effort against the Falcons in week 7, but overall it has not been good. And they're of course missing Nick Bosa and Fred Warner. Their blitz rate was only 19%, even in this last game where they did get more pressure. It's low on the year, bottom 5 in blitz rate on the year. And so we've got potentially a spot where we can see Houston look like an NFL level offense after getting embarrassed last week. Do you have any interest in CJ Stroud or any of the Texans?
I mean, not so much in Stroud, but the Texans receivers are all kind of interesting, at least in DFS or like as cheap spot starts that anybody could go pick up. My favorite of them is probably going to be Jalen Noel. The reason for that is just obviously like preseason prospect takes and all of that. I had always preferred Noel to Higgins. Brett Whitefield had always preferred Noel to Higgins. I think he's really good. He was winning a lot in that fourth quarter on Monday Night Football. And the 49ers have been something of a slot funnel this season. They are, I totally lost the note, but they are, seventh most schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed to the slot, third fewest to the outside. As long as Noel continues to play over freaking Braxton Berrios, then we are good. Then we are getting our Jalen Noel PPR scam. Higgins, I think, is more likely to run more routes. There's like a higher probability that he's an every down player this week, but I think both of them probably will be. Xavier Hutchinson is Xavier Hutchinson. So I would rank them Noel, Higgins, Hutchinson, just in terms of like a spot start, wanting a little bit of upside out of it. But Hutchinson is definitely going to be on the field the most of the three.
I love it. I want all the Jalen Noel propaganda I can get my hands on. We've got the commenters loving that you said Noel. We've had some problems with getting to Noel on this program and sticking on Noel. So that's an improvement, but you can't help yourself but call everything a funnel, and they hate that. They hate that, Ryan.
I know. I do it just because I know you guys hate it. Honestly, I smirk inside every time I'm about to say it.
Okay. I want to talk about Tet McMillan. If you were watching on YouTube, you might have noticed me just like frantically moving McMillan down because I can't help myself but put him way too high in my rankings every week. And then I again find that he's in a bad matchup and get sad. So here we are again. Bills defense has struggled. So like, we don't know what might happen with Andy Dalton. Like maybe things work out here for T-Mac, but this matchup definitely doesn't set up well. It's a really zone heavy defense. You want to be targeting him against man coverage if possible. And the other thing was the Bills have a really high pressure rate and one of the fastest times to pressure, even with a low blitz rate. And so as I look at this, like surely Carolina probably like is going to like try to establish the run here. It has me really worried about going to Tet McMillan. Like, even if they do have to pass, if the Bills like time to pressure like sticks in this spot, I don't know if Carolina is going to have the time for the T-Mac routes to develop. And so I moved him down quite a bit. I'm curious where you're at on him for this week.
Yeah, I mean, I had kind of hoped early in the week that like, oh, we got whatever it was, like 17 expected fantasy points per game for Deontay Johnson last year when Andy Dalton took over. But I agree with you. Like everything Dave Canales has been saying over the last week has been like, we are at our best when we're running the ball. The Bills are a team that you can run on, at least until they put up 4 touchdowns on you, which could definitely happen here. So like, yeah, you're out for T-Mac is just Andy Dalton like has a more functional passing offense than Bryce Young. I think I forget the stat. He has like all of the Panthers 300-yard passing games in the last 2 years or something like that.
Yeah.
So like I do think the upside's there. But yeah, you specifically need them to kind of fail against the run and for the Bills to put up points here. So
Producer Debo.
I don't mind this ranking.
Producer Debo, we got somebody calling him Tetero McSuckin in the chat, and I need you to straight to jail for that person. Get him out of here. McSuckin. I will not. This year has been so tilting with McMillan. The guy is so good. Don't even. Alrighty. So I've got Tetero McMillan at wide receiver 20 in this range of like riskier guys, which is Quentin Johnson, Jalen Waddle, Stephon Diggs. Interesting matchup here for him. What do you think about that for T-Mac?
Yeah, I think he probably belongs over all of them. Waddle, we kind of just talked about, and Diggs too. They both have pretty encouraging schematic matchups, both going to face a lot of single high, all of the blitz and pressure stuff aside with Waddle and the Dolphins. So I could understand boosting them over T-Mac. Yeah, man, this one's actually very hard. I'm kind of struggling in real time with this. Yeah, I'll actually put Waddle and Diggs over T-Mac this week.
Brutal. I do think there is upside though, to Ryan's point. Like when Andy Dalton comes in, I respect Bryce and love Bryce and admire Bryce for all the things he does, but like he has struggled to give them big passing numbers. He's had some like good real life performances, some good fantasy performances where he's used his legs a lot more, but the 250 plus, 300 plus passing yard games have been very rare when he's been in a quarterback, and that's a lot more likely with Dalton, especially if they fall behind the Bills here. So if that happens, you would think there's a decent chance that McMillan would be a pretty big part of it. So if you have to start him, I don't think he's the worst start. I don't want this matchup note to. These matchup notes are always, in my opinion, like just important context to know. Like if it needs to be a tiebreaker, but like don't sit good players for bad players just because of a matchup note. Okay, the Saints are struggling to get pressure. It's taking a long time to get pressure when they do. And so that is a Baker Mayfield note. Baker is at the very top of the league. I think Spencer Rattler is the only quarterback who has more quick pressures than Baker. But that number has been dropping lately on a per week basis as he gets a healthier line. So this looks like a spot where we could see them play pretty well. They do have a big implied total, and Vegas has them only as 4.5-point favorites, where like that means that maybe the Saints can keep this interesting. I think their offense has shown some signs of life, even though they're probably one of the worst, bottom 10 offenses in the league. And so what do you think, Ryan? Do you think this is one that could go back and forth a little bit? Do you have any interest in these guys for DFS? And then like, is there anybody specifically from the Tampa Bay side of things that makes sense as a good play here?
Yeah, I really like this game for DFS. I always like the Saints opponent for DFS just because they play lightning fast, second fastest pace of play, or just by seconds per play. And kind of both of these teams play in such a way that the ancillary pieces can also go off with these big scores. Both the Saints and the Buccaneers have allowed 6 different pass catchers to go over 18 fantasy points this year. That is tied for the second most in the NFL behind only the Pittsburgh Steelers. But specifically, like when you look at the names of who is putting up these big weeks on the Saints, it's Jackson Smith and Jigba, which makes sense, obviously. And then it's Marvin Harrison, Juwan Jennings, Torrey Horton, Theo Johnson, Kayshon Boutte. So yeah, to me, like the Buccaneers ancillary pieces are very interesting if you do get this kind of shootout game environment. Cade Otton obviously leads the Bucs in routes run and receiving yards last week with Godwin on the shelf. Evans knocked out early. The Saints, you. By the way, I have to tell you, I was wrong last week to scold you about the Saints playing cover 3 because they actually did play a bunch of cover 3 last week. Kind of looks like something they're leaning more toward in recent weeks. So I think you're right. We can target, or we can consider the Saints a cover 3 heavy team. That's also good for Cade Otton. So yeah, that my bad on talk. I forget which player we were even talking about.
It was about Caleb Williams,
right or wrong.
It was about Caleb Williams, and he played terrible.
Yep. Yeah. No, you got me on that one. So yeah, Cade Otton, pretty optimistic on. Tez Johnson, just similar. I think he's a really exciting player. Not so much like a coverage note or anything, but really just game environment. Like the Buccaneers need some of these receivers aside from Igbuka to get involved, and he definitely can.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, there are so many tight ends to consider this week. 2 more notes real quick. The Jets have one of the slowest times to pressure. We're going to hit on Cincinnati later. Then the Bears are really struggling to get pressure. And so that's another good note, I think, for Zay Flowers and Lamar Jackson and even Rashad Bateman, maybe on some downfield shots. The chat brought up, when you mentioned the slot funnel note earlier, that Kyler Gordon is back in the lineup for the Bears, and that is meaningful. They are getting healthier, so I don't mean to just copy paste any of their, versus running back stats or anything like that from the first month of the season. I do think that they're playing better, but still, Vegas knows that, and the Baltimore Ravens are implied for 28.5 points this week, which is behind only the Chiefs and the Colts. So definitely a good spot here. And I think that if the Bears can't get pressure on the quarterback, then we could see 300 plus passing yards. We could see several of these pass catchers pop off. So I definitely feel good about saying.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Let's dig into some coverage notes. I want to start with the Eagles. So I am going to put, per the fantasy points down a suite, the best performers so far in terms of production. This is only descriptive. This is not necessarily predictive of who will continue to be the best man coverage beaters, but who has produced the best against man coverage so far. I think that this is interesting for, of course, matchup purposes, but also just knowing like this has been a sign of skill. This has been a skill signal for receivers to be able to beat man coverage. To succeed against man coverage is important. So like obviously check out all the reception perception work that Matt Harmon does. And then also the fantasy points data suite. You can look at separation scores by coverage type. What I'm looking at here is target per route run rate against man coverage. You'll see just next to TPRR, which is target per route run rate, you'll find first downs per route run against man coverage. I have Rome Odunze highlighted, so we'll just stay in this game here when I get done showing you the top here. But at the very top, Puka Nacua, so cool because like this has been an area where he needed to develop. I mean, he was obviously crushing before this, but in the past he'd been much better against zone, and now it's just like I'm just everything. I can win in all situations. Where he's now even at the very top against man coverage. AJ Brown though is the most meaningful one to me here at the top because speaking of perception, and just like I think anybody who's watched at times has been able to note that like AJ Brown doesn't quite look the same this year. And so this to me signals that there might be life. And we'll see in this week against the Giants. It wasn't a spot that he gave us a big performance last time, but this is a spot where he could go off for sure because they're a very aggressive defense. Stephon Diggs, another UNC. Ryan, did you hear that they are calling this podcast an UNC podcast?
How are we the UNC podcast?
You're not. Me and Dan. Stephon Diggs stands out here. Like talk about UNC. Still got it. A lot of underlying data suggested that last year and this year for sure. Amon-Ra St. Brown up here at the top, of course. Garrett Wilson, of course. Troy Franklin. This is interesting. One of Ryan's favorites. Chris Olave stays beating man coverage. Tet McMillan, already talked about him. Cortland Sutton near the top of this list as well. So yeah, definitely go check this stuff out if you're interested in it. You can find it on Fantasy Points Data. And a bunch of stuff is free on Fantasy Points Data right now. You want to let's get some plugs real quick. What do we got? Matchups 15.
That's right. Yeah, you can go use promo code matchups15 to get 15% off your Fantasy Points Data package. We recently made 5 tools free. So the pass rate over expectation, snap shares, route shares, target shares, including first read target shares. All of that stuff you can go get for free right now in the weekly reports. Again, data.fantasypoints.com. Go check out all that amazing data for free. And yeah, if you want to get into all this coverage stuff, matchups15 is the promo code to do that with.
Very cool. Love all the stuff over there. Definitely recommend checking that out. We've also got a reminder from producer Debo smash that like button, people. I'll fill in for Dan here. Hit the like. Please do leave us a review and all that. Leave us comments. Anything you can do to help us continue to grow the program. We appreciate it. Thank you all for being here. We got another comment. Puka Nacua is a pass funnel. What do you think about that, Ryan? He's not wrong.
Yeah, he's a fantasy points funnel. Hell yeah. I love it.
We do indeed. Okay. Rome Odunze has a 34% target per route run rate against man coverage. That's very good. He faces a Ravens defense that has been very aggressive. They haven't used quite as much man coverage lately. But how are you feeling about the matchup here for Odunze? Do we get a bounce back?
Yeah, I mean, I still really like it. The biggest thing with Odunze has just been that the Bears have gone very run heavy the last 2 weeks. I think we see that obviously turn around this week. They'll be forced to. And yeah, even if it's more cover 3 than cover 1, I still feel way better about Odunze versus these more single high types of shells.
All right, good stuff. And then Stephon Diggs, you like as well. The Browns using lots of man coverage. You think this is a decent spot for Diggs?
Yeah, lots of man coverage, lots of single high as well. And the biggest thing with that is that Drake May just throws downfield a lot more against single high. He's up at a 12% deep throw rate against single high, just 8.5% against two high, which is 26th. So yeah, it's more than like some recent weeks, I would say. This is a decent spot to bet on like Drake May just balling, throwing downfield a million times and scoring a ton of fantasy points. So yeah, I think that's actually, he will not be popular in DFS. I don't think that's something I'm going to be looking at.
Love that. Love the Drake May notes. All right, let's talk about the Eagles receivers. I have been ranking Devontae Smith ahead of AJ Brown lately. Bit of a hipster. How do you feel about those two this week? The man coverage splits are way better for AJ Brown this year, but of course, Devontae Smith is fully capable of shredding man coverage.
Yeah, no, I kind of love this. It was a similar angle that I almost wanted to bring up is, yeah, like while in theory, Brown is way better against man, one of the best against man in the NFL. I shouldn't even say in theory, that is factual. In theory, that should help him this week. Devontae Smith's deployment has arguably been a lot better. He's at over a 60% slot rate this year, getting him some easier matchups, including in this matchup, Giants top 5 in fantasy points per game allowed to the slot. Are some of our data charters over at Fantasy Points Data that are watching all of these plays to populate the data suite with all this data are telling me that it really looks like the Eagles are kind of running their offense through Smith more so, where he's the guy that's kind of being used on like the more creative concepts in motion and what have you, where Brown is just kind of being stuck out on an island and saying, go win. So that can lead to more fantasy points for Devontae Smith. So I agree with you that they should pretty much always just be ranked back-to-back every week. They are highly correlated with each other. Every time one of them has gone over 20 fantasy points this year, the other one has as well. So that's like something to keep in mind, obviously, for DFS. If you play one, I would almost just play both and make it a stack. But yeah, I think I also do prefer Smith a little bit this week to Brown, despite the man coverage stuff.
Interesting. Yeah, Dan had the same notes when watching the Eagles. He watched a lot of Eagles film this week because we're going to talk about Devontae Smith. And he felt like the role, the way that they're using Devontae Smith is definitely favorable for him going forward. So yeah, feel really good about both of them. And I think that they're interesting for DFS too. We're basically kind of transitioning to the later stages of the show here where we get into some of the sicko DFS notes. Let's talk about Courtland Sutton. Speaking of such things, what are you expecting for Sutton? I mean, like this game is probably going to be popular, but I don't really ever know where roster rates are going to fall. Do you have any feel?
Yeah, the game will be decently popular. Like Bo Nix will get like some ownership. Dak Prescott, I'm not seeing much ownership on, which is, I guess, not surprising with the Broncos' pass defense. But yeah,
that's definitely meaningful because Dak, like anytime you can get Dak at low ownership, I pretty much do it regardless of the matchup because we know that he can get those huge games and it can be really funneled into like one or two players. So if you happen to hit on the right ones and you get one of those 350-yard games, like that's the type of thing that breaks the slate.
Yeah, no, totally agree. Great note. But yeah, specifically with Sutton and kind of all the Broncos, there is going to be some ownership on them, but I'm almost okay with it. And the reason for that is like this schematic angle where the Cowboys over the first 6 weeks of the season were the most zone coverage heavy team in the NFL. And it was not working out very well for them. Like they were having all of these communication issues in the secondary. It led to all of these busted plays. They had the most receiving yards allowed on busted zone coverages over the first 6 weeks, nearly 200 receiving yards just on those. So last week, they went to being very man coverage heavy. They played it on 50% of the Commanders' dropbacks. Now, you could say, well, that of course makes sense against the Commanders. They had no receivers. They want to say, okay, you don't have receivers. Try to beat our guys. They didn't. It was decently successful, I would say, based on how Jaden Daniels played. But I also think it could kind of stick around just because like it's very hard to go back to, we're just going to play a ton of zone again when it's not been working all season and we're finally having like some success playing man. Our charters tell me that like a lot of their players, like a lot of their pass rushers are much more suited to like a man heavy scheme, to just getting the blitz in there, like creating pressure and winning that way. So I wouldn't be surprised if they continue playing a lot of man against the Broncos. And that would be a mistake based on all of Bo Nix's splits against man, based on Cortland Sutton's splits against man, Marvin Mims, Troy Franklin, all of them. It's really probably more a Bo Nix thing than any of the individual receivers, just because Nix has struggled with decision-making, especially against zone at times this year. But yeah, really that angle is kind of why I'm okay with going back to Nix again, even though the ownership's a bit higher. And then you can even say, well, if they do go back to zone, then it's almost a win-win because they're probably going to bust some more plays as well, just based on what we've seen through the first 6 weeks. So yeah, I think you kind of win either way playing the Broncos.
I love it. Yeah. Sutton has crushed against man coverage for several years now. I think this is definitely a good spot here. Okay, let's talk about the other side of this then. George Pickens versus man. CeeDee Lamb. You expect Surtain to shadow Lamb or spend more time on the perimeter with Pickens? What's your read on this matchup?
So our charters expect him to shadow Lamb. I don't know that he's going to follow him into the slot, but Lamb hasn't been playing as much slot this season as we've seen in the past. He's only around 30%, I believe. So probably Surtain stays on Lamb for the most part. And if that's Pickens left one-on-one against man coverage on the other side, that's very, very exciting. So over the past year and a half, Pickens is, I believe, 4th in yards per out run against man coverage, ahead of CeeDee Lamb, actually, behind only A.J. Brown, Puka Nacua, and Nico Collins. Pickens is an awesome man beater. He is expensive in DFS. He's priced up at like $7K. A lot more ownership is going to be on the Jamar Chases and the Emeka Egbukas in that range. But that makes him a pretty interesting pivot that nobody is going to play in a high total game where his role is very much these kind of high leverage, like high range or like large range of outcome type of targets where he's getting targeted in the end zone a lot. He's getting targeted downfield a lot. That sounds like a large field tournament receiver that can have a boom week that no one's going to be on. So I especially really like Pickens for tournaments and getting unique in DFS this week.
I love that call. People aren't going to be on Pickens. That definitely, like, I think Dak and Pickens are, I think this is basically, it feels too obvious because the point total, but like, I feel like this has got to be our off the wall pick of the week, which we've been kind of nailing lately. I love that. We're going back to Pickens for sure. I am curious, like Pickens or Sutton for redraft purposes. Like I have Sutton really, really high. But like, I honestly feel like the difference between him and Pickens is not that big. Do you have any thoughts on that? Like he's more expensive than Sutton for DFS purposes, right?
Yeah. So Pickens is 900 more expensive than Sutton. But that is like why there will not be much ownership on Pickens. Right. He doesn't project well for his price tag from a median perspective. That means that whenever you click optimize on your lineups, when people are using projections around the industry, George Pickens doesn't end up in a lot of lineups. But yeah, from just a range of outcomes perspective in that game, I really like Pickens. Start sit, I would just play Cortland Sutton. It's a much better like matchup kind of on its face. The volume is probably a little bit better for Sutton on average. So yeah, I would rank Sutton above Pickens, but in terms at ownership in DFS, I think Pickens is really interesting and a guy I want to make sure I get to when I'm attacking that game.
I've been sleeping on Pickens, I think, in these rankings at least. Because like the volume did drop off a little bit when Lamb got back. Ferguson's first read target rate didn't drop at all, And so that had me feeling like this was just a pretty dicey spot. But yeah, I'm moving him up. Basically, I mean, like he feels pretty similar to A.J. Brown for me. And there's like more shootout potential, I think the chance of getting some crazy week-winning Pickens game is higher than it is with A.J. Brown probably. Could be wrong on that. Maybe the Giants make things really interesting here again. That would be fun. Okay, we've got several more coverage matchup notes to get into. So let's keep things rolling. I want to hear your thoughts on Jalen Waddle. We've talked about this Falcons defense already, but like as pertains to Waddle specifically, how are you feeling? Because he's a tough one to know what to do with after last week's game, of course. The usage overall has been great before that, and it was weird weather and everything last week. So where are you at with Waddle?
Yeah, so I do kind of expect this to be more of like a PPR scam type of thing, or maybe he gets there for tournaments like in yards after the catch. But yeah, the Falcons playing by far the most single high in the NFL this year, over 70%. They've never gone below 60%. And that is totally new for Waddle, because aside from the weather in last week's game, aside from that game, the Dolphins haven't seen single high on more than 48% of their dropbacks in any game. But to me, it makes sense that that's how the Falcons are going to continue playing. It has largely been working for them. The Dolphins kind of have a run threat now with Devon Achane too. He's at 5.3 yards per carry. So it makes sense to me that they're not going to do what kind of all these other teams do against the Dolphins, which is drop back into too high and say, yeah, good luck, try to beat us. So I think that creates like some more space for Jalen Waddle, where he's up at a 0.3 target per route run against single high. That's top 10 at the position this year. 30% better yards per route run against single high. And excluding last week's weather affected game, I mean, he is top 12 or even top 3 or top 7 in like every receiving category without Tyreek Hill. Like 19.4 fantasy points per game, 118 air yards per game. Like this is a really, really good role. It condenses even further with Darren Waller on IR now. So I think he's pretty interesting. I'm seeing like a little bit of ownership projected in DFS, like around 9-10%. I honestly think that's lower because I think people don't want to click Dolphins right now is kind of the general vibe, understandably so. So I think he's interesting.
He's definitely interesting. And this Falcons defense, I did dig into it like game by game. They are doing this single high thing any game. I thought maybe it would have fluctuated a bit because AJ Terrell, their top corner, did miss 2 games, but even in those 2 games, they still had a 78% single high rate, which is way above any other team in the NFL. Those games were against Bryce Young and Marcus Mariota, so that could be part of it, that they didn't worry too much about getting beat over the top. But like even against the Bills, 85% they had single high coverage, which is just insane. We showed earlier, like they've really shut down pass games. No quarterback has thrown for more than 200 yards. So that's why I'm worried about Waddle, but I do think he's talented enough to win in any matchup. And I think the schematic note here is relevant. So there's definitely upside. All right, let's talk about the Joe Flacco stuff. We finally arrived. I want to hear where you're at with the Bengals. Are you stacking up the Cincinnati Bengals in DFS this week?
Okay, yeah. So you mentioned the implied total for the Bengals is 25 points earlier on the show. And that was something that just like jumped off the page at me, just because Joe Flacco is almost never in these spots where he's implied for a lot of points and favored like that. To me, I was like, I need to go back and research and see what has happened in these spots where it's not, he's just trailing, he's on an awful Browns team or whatever, like just chucking it over and over. Does he still chuck it over and over? And the answer is yes. So in 6 games that Flacco has been favored as a starter over the past 3 seasons, he's at nearly 40 pass attempts per game. He is averaging 23.4 DraftKings fantasy points per game. He's gone over 25 DK points per game in half of them, and he's hit the 300-yard bonus 5 out of those 6 times. Flacco is priced at 53, 54, something like that. He's very cheap. The Bengals have had the second highest pass rate over expectation in the league over the past 2 weeks with him starting. Most teams run on the Jets. I don't think that's the Bengals' strength. I don't think that's what they want to do in this matchup. So Flacco doubles are very, very live to me. The Jets also likely to be missing Sauce Gardner unless he makes like the miraculous 1 week concussion recovery that we very rarely see. So even with Sauce on the field, the Jets rank 4th worst in all of passer rating allowed, adjusted net yards per attempt allowed, and EPA per dropback allowed. This has not been an efficient pass defense at all. It's just the teams usually run because they're not really threatened by them from like an offensive perspective. But yeah, the Bengals could just go out and throw on them all day. especially if they continue to play a good amount of man coverage without Sauce. Like that is just amazing for Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Flacco has gone to one of those two on over 60% of his throws over the past 2 weeks when faced with man coverage. So it's just the easiest double stack ever. It's like playing Joe Burrow doubles if Joe Burrow was 5,300 is kind of how I'm looking at it.
I love that. I've got Joe Flacco at QB 14 this week, which what a time to be alive. I love this. This simulation that we're living in here is very, very fun, that Joe Flacco just continues to come back into our lives. I've got T. Higgins at wide receiver 14, so just behind the Philadelphia guys and George Pickens, who we just talked about. Alrighty, Ryan, honestly, like, feel free to just kind of run us out here with your matchup notes, like Mason Taylor in this game, right? But then you have a few other ones. So just wherever you want to take us.
You want to stay in this game, or can we go? Okay. What else do we have in this game? So I'm a little like, we talked about Breece Hall. Honestly, we talked about everything in this game. I feel like we talked about Breece, we talked about Mason Taylor, we talked about Chase Brown. Yeah, I feel like we've covered this game. Honestly, I don't have.
Did you talk about the why? Did you talk about the why behind Mason Taylor? I know people are probably apprehensive to play any Jets pass catchers, but you do think it's a specifically good spot for him in this matchup, right?
Yeah, I mean, Bengals, most schedule adjusted fantasy points per game allowed to tight ends. I'm going to say it, they funnel everything underneath. They've given up very few receiving yards on the deep ball, but the third most within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. Maybe Taylor is like a little bit better off with Tyrod. Like maybe he gets kind of through his progressions a little bit more and takes the check down. I don't know. I don't know if I feel as good about Taylor as him being at the tight end 8. I mean, I guess I get it though.
I think there's more upside. I think there's more upside with Pitts and with Loveland. I think Taylor and Fannin project similarly in the way that they'll get their production. They're more like floor plays, I guess. Would you prefer Fannin to him?
I think I would. Yeah. Just with what the role was last week with no Njoku. I believe Njoku's missing this game again. I think I prefer Fannin.
Love to hear it. Alrighty, what else do you have for us? Let's look. 49ers, we were talking about Jalen Noel, Tej Johnson.
I mean, we talked about him too. Okay, one thing I wanted to make sure we got to, if I can just go to whatever game I want, is the Bills. We are not going to see a lot of ownership on Josh Allen in DFS this week. The reason for that is because Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson are both priced way too cheaply. They're both like 66, 68. Allen is over 7K where he should be. But what that means is there's going to be a lot of ownership on Hurts and Jackson. Allen can absolutely just beat them and blow them out in any given week. And this week, gets the Panthers very much a pass funnel. Sorry, guys. But yeah, third highest pass rate over expectation allowed, and play a lot of cover 3. What that has done with the Bills is it has created more consolidation in terms of their pass catchers. Khalil Shakir and Dalton Kincaid have about half of the Bills' receiving yards against cover 3, over 44% of their first read targets. That drops down to like 27%, 34% against all other shells. So with what the Panthers do, it's more likely that Allen will be looking to Shakir, looking to Kincaid. And it's always hard to like stack Allen with a pass catcher. That's kind of always my gripe with playing him in DFS. But specifically this week, the coverage matchup makes that a little bit easier to just play him with one of those two. And yeah, he's great because he's expensive and will be not as popular as the other two kind of big quarterbacks up at the top.
That's definitely interesting. Yeah, anytime that you can get Allen cheaper or not cheaper, less rostered than he should be, is worth looking into. It's kind of like the Dak thing. And yeah, some stacking options here. I think Kincaid in particular is interesting to me because there's a lot of tight ends to like this week. On that note, did you have some Tyler Warren thoughts?
Yeah, I almost want to ask you kind of what to do with Tyler Warren in this spot, because like the Colts are favored by 2 touchdowns. So
right.
Like it very well could be that they just don't throw like at all, or that they don't need to. They may not have to drop back the entire second half. Like that is a totally live outcome. But it should be a good schematic matchup for Tyler Warren. Titans are top 3 in cover 4 rate. Warren is up at a 32% target share against cover 4. He ranks top 9 among all wide receivers in every receiving category against cover 4. So he's been great against what they usually do. But yeah, like then again, it's a matchup where they may not have to throw much. It was actually Michael Pittman that went off against the Titans back in week 3. So I just kind of don't know what to do in terms of DFS. Like obviously he's an easy start or whatever in regular fantasy. But the way I kind of came down on this was he's 5,500. Somewhere around that. He's effectively priced as the wide receiver 16 if he were a wide receiver. Over his past 3 cover 4 heavy matchups, which were also his past 3 games, he is at 16.5 DraftKings fantasy points per game, which would rank as the wide receiver 4 among main slate eligible wide receivers this week on this like very thin receiver slate. So that was kind of interesting to me. He's not going to, if he were like a more off the wall type of play, I might be more into it. He's probably going to get double digit ownership. I think it's probably justified, but yeah, I don't know. I just have gone very back and forth on him this week, like trying to decide whether to write him up.
Yeah, that's all interesting. Like I instinctually think I lean towards fading him. It does feel like he should be more expensive, and because of the price, I would guess that he and obviously the Colts could score 6 touchdowns in this game. I would guess that it'll be pretty popular. I would probably be fading him. Are there any like leverage angles that you would try to employ? Like, would you then try to be more Jonathan Taylor heavy, or even like Michael Pittman? Would you mix him in some if you were fading, or would you just like fade outright?
It's kind of hard to do leverage here just because there is no other tight end that is priced like near him. It's Jake Ferguson up at 6K, and then George Kittle all the way down at 4.5. But I think there will be even more ownership on Kittle. I guess the way to get leverage is just to play a ton of Jonathan Taylor, which is like not a bad idea. I think Taylor's ownership actually it will be higher than Warren's. It might be lower than it should be just because there are so many good, expensive running backs to pay up for this week. There's Bijan Robinson, who is cheaper. Derrick Henry is priced at 6,000, which is hilarious. The last time he was that cheap was week 8 of 2019, I believe, week 9 of 2019. That was, for those who don't remember, the year that they finally stopped splitting carries between him and Dion Lewis and just let him be like the full-time early down back for the first time in his career after the Dion Lewis, DeMarco Murray, all of those committees that he was in. So it's literally we have not had Derrick Henry this cheap as a full-time player ever, essentially. So yeah, I think people are going to be paying up to the running backs more so than like the tight ends, but I do think JT could get lost in the shuffle there just because he's by far the most expensive.
I'm seeing all sorts of crazy questions in the chat about like Ramondre Stevenson. Like Tyler Allgeier was the first one. They'd rather start him. And then there was one where it's like Tyrone Tracy. Stevenson is $500 less than Derrick Henry. To your point, like that's crazy. Stevenson against the Browns is $500 less than Derrick Henry at home with a 28.5 point implied total against a gettable defense. Like, yeah, that is interesting. That makes sense that he would probably be pretty popular. So do you think Zay Flowers will maybe not have as much of a roster grade, or will it just be like the Ravens altogether are pretty popular?
No, Flowers we are currently projecting is the highest ownership wide receiver on the slate. Yeah, he's also just way too cheap at 5,400. So yeah, that goes into the Lamar Jackson ownership as well. Like the Ravens are just very easy and cheap to stack this week, which doesn't mean you can't do it. To be clear, they're good plays, but you just have to get unique elsewhere if you do so. Yeah.
One last question for you, and I'm down to talk a little bit more DFS if you have anything specific, but on the fan and note is, would you, even if Njoku is back, that's my ranking was expecting Njoku to be back. Even if he is back, are you still like fanning over Mason Taylor?
I would go Taylor over Fannin at that point.
Okay. Loveland?
Yeah, that's close enough there. I would still go Fannin over Loveland just because we're like, we've seen the role, we've seen the usage more with Fannin. Like we're much more guessing with Loveland. Loveland may be a decent way to get your Raven stacks unique as the bring back there, by the way, too, now that you mentioned that. But
you already
you
already know I'm gonna have way too much Loveland this weekend. It's
yes,
the way to
sir.
be. It's the only way to live my life irresponsibly. All right, Ryan, thank you so much. Another great week. Tons of information for the people to dig into. Maybe listen to this one twice. I know it's a lot to keep up with all the matchup notes that Ryan throws at you, but it's really good stuff. And I hope that you all find it interesting. And this is like a different way to get into making these start sit decisions. I hope this is helpful. We try to cover it, usage and everything throughout the week, and then at this point, give you like the last piece here, which is the matchups, the Vegas expectations, like what kind of game scripts we might be looking at, and all of that. And I don't know if there's anybody better in the world who's digging into this stuff at such a sick level than Ryan Heath. He doesn't have any furniture in his room, but he has everything you need to know about matchups up in his head. So thank you, Ryan, so much for being here. Y'all give Ryan all the support, all the Twitter follows. Is it at Ryan J_Heath? Is that correct?
That's right.
It is on the screen. Yeah. Follow Ryan. Shout out Ryan. Give Ryan some fun comments in the chat so we can keep making silly inside jokes here. Thank you all so much. Ryan, did you have anything specifically you're working on at Fantasy Points that you want the people to know about?
Yeah, if you guys are interested in our DFS discussions that we go into at the end of every show and you want more of that, you want more of my DFS takes, also very heavy on the matchups, you can go read my article, Advanced Matchups. It comes out every Friday morning over on fantasypoints.com. You can also use promo code matchups15 to get 15% off the premium or all-in package that will let you read that Advanced Matchups article over at Fantasy Points. So yeah, thanks so much, Jacob. Really fun show. Had an awesome time. And yes, guys, I promise next week there will be at least one piece of furniture in the room behind me. I promise that's what I'm going to do.
That's exciting. That's something to look forward to. All right, we'll see y'all next week. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, producer Debo. This has been Beyond the Box Score. Take it easy, y'all.